Okay, so where we left off and where I got cut off is we were looking for the domain and the range for this graph. So what I suggested that you do is look at the window. So if we look at the window, the way this is set up, you can see that on your graph, the smallest x value is almost 0, and the largest x value is 4.4. It's counting by ones. The y minimum value goes down to negative 141, but look at how big y max is. It's 973, and they're counting by ones. Okay, so let's go back to our graph and look. Well, to see what's going on this graph, I want to know what's going on this part of the graph down here. So I don't know about you, but I want to see what's going on the x-axis here. So I'm going to make that x value bigger. So let's go to the window. And right now, the maximum x value is at 4.4. So I'm going to use the scroll button, scroll down, and I'm going to change that to, I don't know, 20, just to see what's going on. And I'm going to graph it. Oh, look at that. So that's nice. You see it go up, you see it come down, and it hits right here. All right, so the only problem is we don't see the top of the graph. So I need that y max value to be bigger. So I look here, here's x max, and y max is down here, and it's about 1,000. So maybe I'm going to make it bigger by, I don't know, 1,500. Okay, now we're going to graph. Nice. So now I can see what's going on this graph. So I want to figure out domain and range. So remember, domain are all the possible x values, and range are all the possible y values. Okay, so let's look at the x values first. One of the ways we can figure that out is we can use this button called the trace key. So if I click on this trace key, it's going to allow me to go along and trace. Now see how it's tracing the points? And then it stops. Okay, so what's wrong? It's tracing my data. Right? I want it to trace my graph. So I'm going to go down to the next level. I want to go to the graph. So you're going to hit this arrow key down. Now it took you to the graph. So now it's continuing on. So I'm going to, again, you're always using the x values to scroll along the x-axis. So we're going in this direction using this arrow key. And you're just going to keep going. And I'm coming all the way down over here. And see, I'm getting closer and closer. I want y to be 0. Oops. So at some point there, y went 0, because you can see y is negative 17. I'm going to go back a hair. Oh, now it's 24. So it's 16.9. And if I go one dot this way, it goes to 17.06. And I've gone into the negative zone. So somewhere around 17, that hits the ground. So let's just say approximately 17. So our domain, and we're going to write that down, is approximately 17. So of all the possible x values, it starts at 0 and it goes to approximately, so I would write it down, 17. So on my paper, I've just written down that the domain starts at 0 and goes to approximately 17. And we'll come back and I'll show you what that looks like when I write it. All right, so now I want to figure out my y values. So my y values are, now this is all about a rocket going up from the ground. So this must be the ground here, and then it goes up, and how far does it go up? So I need to know how far up this goes. So I can use that trace key again. So we can do that. We go along here. Again, I'm going to use my arrow sideways, and I'm going to trace it all the way up here. Okay, and let's see. Right now, I'm looking at my y value, and it's 1,155.8. Oh, it just went down. Let's see. 0.8. It just went up to 0.93. Up, it went down again. So somewhere around there, approximately 1,156, approximately, we can say that that's the maximum value. So let's just write that down. So on a separate piece of paper, you're writing all the possible y values, and it is approximately 1,156. All right, so I'm going to stop right now and show you what that would look like when I write it. Okay, so here's where I wrote my work. And I said that the domain is all the possible x values. And I know that my domain started at 0 and it went to approximately 17. So I'm going to write it like this. I'm going to write it as an inequality. So all the x values, okay, the x has to be greater than or equal to 0, and the x has to be less than or equal to approximately 17. So we're just going to estimate for right now. So that's my domain. My range, again, I had said to write this down. So all my possible y values are that y cannot be a negative. So we're never going to have a negative height. So y, again, must be greater than or equal to 0. And y must be less than or equal to approximately 1,156. Okay, so we just estimated approximately what that is. So our domain and range are there. And you always write them as an inequality. All right, so there's the domain. If you need to stop and then write it down, stop and write it down. And over here, here's the range. And we used the trace key for that. And I'm just going to write that down to remind you. So it was the trace key to approximate the values. Okay, so we're going to get really comfortable with this calculator over the next year. And I'm going to keep showing you different things. I'll remind you of them. But one of the really nice keys on this calculator is that it can calculate a lot of things. So I'm going to show you what it can calculate. So first, I'm going to hit the second key, and I'm going to go to Calc, which is right above Trace. Now, these are the different things it can calculate. It can find a value. If I put an X in, it can find the matching Y. It can find zeros. It can find a minimum or maximum. It can find where things intersect. And here, these we'll find when we go into calculus. Okay, so at this point, I want to find the maximum because this curves up, and I want to see, it curves down, and I want to see what that maximum value is. Did I get a good estimate when I said that it was about 1,156? So let's see if we can find what the vertex is, and we're going to use this maximum key to calculate it. All right, so I'm going to scroll down to maximum using the scroll key, and I'm going to hit enter. All right, so notice it says at the bottom here, left bound. All right, the left boundary means that I want to go to the left of the vertex, wherever it is. So I'm going to go somewhere on this side, and it doesn't matter where, anywhere over there. And I'm going to hit enter. So I'm telling the calculator there's a left boundary. Now I'm going to come over here and go to the other side of the vertex, and I'm going to give it a right boundary. And then it says, do you want to make a guess? And you say yes by hitting enter. And it's telling you that the maximum is at 8.5, and the maximum value was at 1,156. So using the trace key, we got the value. Okay, so you now know that the vertex of this thing is when the x is 8.5 and the y is 1156. Okay, you did that by using the calc key. You want to remember that? You want to write it down in your notes somewhere. So what I'd recommend doing is writing myself little notes on how to use the graphing calculator so that when you come back to it later, you'll remember this. All right, so this is the assignment, the Aspire to do. It's on quadratic regression, and I'm expecting that for you to complete this, you should finish problems 1, 2, and 3. We'll continue it on the next unit, so we'll keep working on using the graphing calculator. So you should at least get through problems 1, 2, and 3, turn them into me, and I will correct those and give you credit for those. And we'll put this back into your binder, and you can work on it as an Aspire 2 a little bit later. All right, so again, you're going to do problems 1, 2, and 3, and then turn them in. So you're finding, if you look here, it says that you're going to enter the data, you're going to make a scatter plot, you're going to use the regression feature to find the regression equation, you're going to write the regression equation down, and you're going to say how good a model is. So when you put that data into the graphing calculator, you come back and tell me, is it good data or is it not good data? What is its regression coefficient? So is the R squared in this case, is it close to 1? Is it exactly 1? Is it close to 0? Is it good data? So you're going to answer that question. You move on here and do the same thing. Again, use a graphing calculator to find the best fit. And then this time, predict the change in finishing times when the wind speed is 10 meters. So you're looking for when X is 10. So you can use the calculate button and put in a value if you want, or you can look at the table and see when the X value is 10. Ask me about that in class if you're not sure. And then the last one, you're answering all of these questions. So this is where you really get into it and see what you can do. All right, so don't forget to ask questions in class, and don't forget to study for the test next week.